DJ Seed Productions proudly presents The Dusty Cover Show. Hear the inside story from today's authors, plus free chapter downloads. Kindly promoted by Lady Lake Artist Promotion and Publicity for artists and bands in the US and UK. And now, here's Dusty Cover.
Hello and welcome to the Dusty Cover Show, and thank you so much all of you for tuning in and for all the support you have given me. I want to say a big thank you to my producer Douglas Coleman for his magical editing. He is somewhat of a wizard, as you might have guessed, not only a very talented musician but also an amazing editor, so thank you very much, Douglas. On today's show we have a treat for you. We have Dan Holloway, the Oxfordshire poet. And this episode I'll be interviewing Dan about his wonderful modern poetry, and we will be treated to a reading from one of his newer works. I'm sure you'll be surprised by it. Dan Holloway is something of an amazing poet, a novelist, publisher, communicator, event organizer, and a promoter. In fact, there isn't much connected with literature that he doesn't do, and he does it all with gusto and fun and a probing desire to experiment. Also on the show we have 2 songs, not one, but 2, both by people I really admire. So the first song will be by Leroy Miller. Leroy is a Los Angeles blues sensation who has worked on countless recordings for music's brightest stars like John Mayer, Macy Gray and Smash Mouth. Leroy has toured all over the world as supporting acts for bands such as Aerosmith's and the Dave Matthews Band. He's played in venues ranging from the Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood to Webster Hall in Manhattan, as well as arenas like PNC Bank Arts Center in New York and Toronto in Canada. So, he's also a complete hunk, by the way. This song, Integrity, is my favourite song of his, and Leroy is the vocalist and the guitarist in the track, and it was hard just to pick one song of Leroy's work because it all rocks, but Integrity is just so perfect. It's got clear lyrics with a catchy tune and some mind-blowing guitar playing. This is a classic rock song which has a strong intro that leads to some awesome vocals. The lyrics are clearly and powerfully sung. Leroy has a great range and a depth to his voice, and he sings in a masterful way. The song has some great guitar riffs and is backed by fab drums, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Hi, this is Leroy Miller, and you're listening to my song Integrity on the Dusty Cover Show.
Stepping stone, I've got integrity, yes, it ain't gonna change. In the way that I live my life, never be the same, no.
and we will be back with Dan Holloway after this short advertisement.
With adventure boundless, best-selling author Jane Yates follows up her acclaimed Paradox Child trilogy with Garden, a steampunk science fiction novel with fantasy overtones, enjoyable for all ages. Inspired by the classic novel The Secret Garden, Garden begins with 11-year-old Aberdeen living in space above a perilous Earth. Aberdeen is looked after by her robot nanny, but she is often used to being alone, dreaming of dragons and castles. The sudden death of her parents forces her to live with her neglectful uncle on Earth and is captivated to find a world repairing itself. Fascinated by her new surroundings, Aberdeen makes new friends and explores the boarded-up house, only to discover a mysterious tunnel leading to wondrous things. Follow Aberdeen's journey of self-discovery, of trials and friendship. Garden, narrated by acclaimed actress Anna Parker Naples.
And I'm here today with one of my favourite poets, Dan Holloway. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
Thank you very much for coming on to my show.
Thank you very much for having me.
What are you working on at the moment, and do you have any future plans?
I'm working on lots of things. I'm working on a novel set in Oxford, set in the disused parts of the Bodleian Library, the tunnels under the city. It's a young adult story with fairly dark gothic type overtones, also elements of a thriller, and I'm working on quite a lot of poetry as well at the moment.
Right. I was lucky enough to listen to some of your a live performance the other day, and you are amazing. And where does this come from? Is it something in your childhood or something?
Not particularly. I started writing before I knew I enjoyed performing it. I was a teacher for several years. That might have made some difference, but then I realised that the best way to promote your work if you're a writer is to give lots of readings. So I ended up standing up on stage. The first performance I did was at Rough Trade Records in London.
Wow.
That was an amazing venue, and I realised I like being in front of the audience as much as I like being at home doing the writing.
Wow.
So now I write a lot of poetry because that gives you an excuse to get up and be in front of a crowd.
I was totally spellbound when I heard you perform one of your poems, as was the rest of the small but very enthusiastic crowd. Hopefully we'll get you some more followers after this, because I know you perform quite a bit, don't you?
Yes, at the moment it seems to be 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow, really? As much as that?
There's a lot of poetry in Oxford. Just last night there were 150 people crammed into the old fire station in Oxford listening to poetry, which was brilliant.
That's a wonderful venue, the old fire station. Yeah. So, and a really good cause as well, because that's for the homeless people.
For crisis.
And everything. So, do you do a lot to do with?
There are a lot of events held there. It's a really big centre for poetry in Oxford.
So do you do anything else towards... I know you do some things towards mental health as well, don't you?
I do. I write poetry about mental health. I also do various campaigning things. I've spoken to the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Debt and Mental Health, and helped Mind with some of their leaflets. And
you write for The Guardian as
well.
I
write for The Guardian, yes, for the Books blog.
That should bring us to, where can people find your information, really?
If you just Google me, Dan Holloway, then you'll find me. So I'm not the guitar player and I'm not the cyclist, I'm the other one.
The poet.
Yes.
And I've made a page on my website, so if you have a look at that, there's all of Dan's links there, and he's always happy to hear feedback, and because some of your poems are quite political, aren't they?
Yes, some of them are.
Yes.
Only some of them.
Like the one that are you going to read that one tonight about the what are you going to read tonight?
I don't know. I will read a bit of a poem. Probably the one you know that.
With the dog.
Yes. Yes, the one with the dog.
I like that one.
Excellent.
So
only the first 3 verses though, because they're the clean bits.
Oh, okay. Yes. So, would you like to do that now, or would you like to answer small questions?
I'm happy to do that now.
Okay.
I'll introduce it very briefly. It's based on my experiences of being a poet at writers' conferences. So it's all about the tips you pick up on how to write a bestseller. It's sort of making fun of the writing industry a little bit.
Can we have a round of applause, Douglas, as well when he's finished? Because I think this is awesome.
When choosing what to write, pick a popular cliché. Make your words like a wine that you drink by the pichet. If your book was a dog, you'd recognise it on a leash, say a pug or labradoodle, not a Bichon Frise. Be on Instagram and Pinterest and social media. Do minimal research on Wikipedia. Add some vampires like on Twilight, but nothing bleedier. Make your hero look like Darcy, but nothing weedier. Have sex like E.L. James, but nothing seedier. Told in repetitious metaphors like Anastasia, torn from the thesaurus of sexual dysphagia. You mustn't offend, so make it not too gory. Have it edited and proofed in all its glory. Give it all the compassion that you learnt from the Tories, a narrative arc from Jack Canori, and an emotional punch straight out of Montessori, and write at least 4 sequels, but that's another story.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what keeps you motivated towards writing then, Dan?
Coffee. The same as most people. Always having lots of ideas. And with poetry in particular, the fear of performing the same thing too many times. Because there's nothing worse. It's a balance, because audiences who know you like to hear certain poems, but there's nothing worse than making the audience feel as though they listen to the same thing all the time. You feel like you're cheating people.
Right.
So it's important to keep giving them new things.
Your poems are all pretty much set in the present, though, aren't they? And
They are, yes, no, I can't do historical anything.
No.
As far back as I go is 1989.
Did you self-publish or publish traditionally, and why?
My journalism I published traditionally in lots of places, as you say, the Guardian and various other magazines. Poetry as well, I tend to do for anthologies and books that are put together traditionally, but novels I self-publish because I write slightly weird things. So it's much easier to self-publish because you're not constrained by traditional genres. And I'm part of the Alliance of Independent Authors, which it's fabulous. I co-wrote one of their books called Opening Up to Indie Authors, which is a campaign book trying to get the publishing industry to take self-published authors more seriously. So it's aimed at prizes, the media, conferences, bookshops, and helping us to work together.
You do so much, don't you? You actually...
There's always a lot going on.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm really grateful for you taking the time to come and do this interview on the Dusty Cover Show. And what would you consider would be I know you mentioned your books and you said they're quite unusual. They're not steampunk at all, are they? No. What would you consider would be the most important part of a good story?
I like something that has an emotional impact. I don't like things that are sort of polished but a little bit anaesthetic, sort of bland, and there's too much emphasis on the craft and getting everything absolutely right, and you take the emotional punch out of it.
Yes.
Basically, I like emo music as well. I'm terrible like that. So I just like something that's got an emotional hit.
If that book that you were telling me about, the one with all the tunnels under the Bodleian Library and everything else, which is true, of course.
It's true because the Bodleian Library recently moved most of its books to Swindon, so there's a lot of disused space lurking underneath Oxford.
Yeah, so all of those people who visit Oxford are walking over, because it goes right under the road.
Yes, miles and miles and miles of empty tunnels.
Wow.
Which is a fabulous setting for books.
Yes. So if that got made into a film, maybe not a real film, maybe like a Walt Disney
I don't think it would be a Walt Disney sort of film. Not unless Disney's changed a lot since my day.
Okay. So what character would you play and why? If you could.
I would be far too old because they're all young characters.
Isn't there any monsters or anything?
No, it's set in the parkour and skateboarding community though. And I'm a runner, so I love.
That's right.
I love doing all these sorts of free running, and so I'd be happy to do anyone who did that. There's lots of scenes of people running across the rooftops of Oxford.
Wow.
Jumping from building to building and just generally using Oxford as a playground. But they're all above the skyline, so people walking around Oxford going about their life can't see them. So you're just this separate parallel existence in the rooftops, which is
so they're in
fabulous.
The rooftops and under
the ground, but not in the middle bit where everyone else is, by and large. Yes.
What freedom to
yes, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. And what was the name of that book then?
It's going to be called The Alice Room. So lots of Oxford references there.
Like Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, absolutely.
Instead of falling down a rabbit hole, they're falling down the tunnels.
Yeah.
And
yes.
up. Yeah,
and up onto the spires, yeah. Because obviously Oxford is full of Alice.
Yes.
And
yes.
it was a great pleasure to be reading it. Blackwell's did a full reading of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland for Alice Day, which is a big Oxford tradition as Alice Day,
right.
On the 4th of July every year.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of years ago, Blackwell's, which contains the world's biggest room of any bookshop, they held a run through of the whole of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and I was part of that reading to
wow.
people. So yes, Alice is a big thing in Oxford. So it sort of made sense.
What inspires you to write, would you say, apart from coffee?
Apart from coffee.
Where do these ideas come from, then? Where, I always used to get my best ideas in the bath.
Mainly from walking around cities.
Right.
I love being in the city.
Yes.
Oxford it's a bit small, but it's still fabulous. And looking up and looking down and not looking where everyone else looks.
That's true.
For example, if you walk down some of the streets in Oxford and look up, you would never realise there's huge amounts of graffiti at the top level that you would absolutely never notice if you're just walking down the street.
No, I haven't noticed.
So if you walk down George Street,
right, I will.
Which is one of the main streets with Oxford's bus station on, just look up as you're walking. There's huge amounts of fabulous graffiti.
Wow.
High up on these old buildings, and it's all suggestive of communities that live up there. You'd never know it just walking down the street and looking in the shops.
There's also that sculpture, isn't there? Gormley? The naked
Anthony
man.
Gormley. Is that one in Oxford?
Yes. There's that.
I didn't know, because I know that it was at the Hayward Gallery in London.
No.
But if he's come to Oxford, that's
yes,
brilliant.
Over the bookshop opposite the Blackwell posters one on the corner there.
Yes,
it's there.
I'll have
We
to have
both
a look.
learned something
Excellent.
new. What was the last book that you finished reading, and what did you think of it?
The last book I finished reading was called The Monster of Florence, and it's a non-fiction account of the famous serial killer in Florence in the 1970s and 80s, called The Monster, who is featured as a background in Thomas Harris's Hannibal, and the case features fictionally there, but this is a fascinating insight into basically police corruption and the investigation around the killings more than the killings, and the extent to which investigations can get completely derailed by politics. So it's absolutely fascinating.
Are you just reading the one book at the moment? Last time I spoke to you, you were reading
yes,
books.
I'm also reading. I'm reading several things. I'm reading Lisa Tamati's Running to Extremes. She's a New Zealand-based ultramarathon runner, and another book about ultramarathons, which is Lizzie Hawker's Runner, and she's England's most successful athlete ever, pretty much, but no one's ever heard of her. So go out and she's won all the leading ultramarathons in the world, and she's absolutely incredible. So go out and discover her, and it's the most beautiful book. And I'm also just finishing off the Divergent trilogy, just halfway through the last book. Looking forward to that, although I know how it ends, and I know that people really don't like how it ends. So I'm interested to hear that.
And I know you're a runner yourself, so
yes.
So I don't know how probably you need to run because you're so busy. You need to run.
I certainly do run between a lot of things. Yes, absolutely. Certainly around Oxford, you can get most places by running.
And talking of running, I think we might be running out of time now. So thank you again very much, Dan.
Thank you very much, Dusty.
This is the Moss Brothers, and you're listening to Devil's Lullaby on the Dusty Cover Program.
I haven't thought about you since long ago. I blame the game of yesterday stays in my thoughts. You couldn't see the good in me. It took you so long. It's hard to be alive and free when your right is wrong. Will you change your mind? Will you run and hide? Will you believe the devil's lullaby? Where are you going? Going nowhere fast, long. A flash of light, a little could kill, I dare you to look in my eyes. Insane to think you're gonna be more than you try. Well, I don't know where I'll go, but I know this time you're gonna be alone as I wave goodbye. Will you change your mind? Will you run and hide? Will you believe the devil's lullaby? Where are you going? Going nowhere fast home. A flash of light, a little high, and you're looking back. And I will go with you and leave behind I do. Will you run and see what's on the other side of me? Will you change your mind? Will you run and hide? Will you believe the devil's lullaby? Where are you going? Going nowhere fast home. A flash of light, a little high, and you're looking back.
You are listening to the Dusty Covers Show, brought to you by GJC Productions. And now, here's Angie Jean's song, Promise.
Since the day that we first met, no more fear, no regret. Rescued me when I was low, when I had no place else to go. When I look into your eyes, nothing else is on my mind. Never scared when I'm with you. Always know you'll help me through. I promise I will always be loving you so tenderly. Promise forever you have me.
thank you very much for our wonderful guest, Dan Holloway, and I'm certainly sure that many of you won't look at poetry in the same way ever again. He's such an inspirational writer. So please also check out his website, which is danholloway.wordpress.com, and he's done quite a lot of poetry. Last Man Out of Eden, which is free to download. Also Razor Blades included, which you can buy the paperback for £5. Also, I cannot bring myself to look at these walls in case you have graffitied on them with Love Poetry, which is a downloadable free ebook. He's got novels, Evie and Guy, download also free ebook. The Man Who Painted Angusta's Shoes, which has been completely rewritten. And also The Songs from the Other Side of the Wall, which is a paperback, and Black Height High, which is 99 cents. Also, he does short stories and conceptual writing, and writing as Danny Coe, which is Dreaming Spires and An Oxford Christmas. So please check out all of those. And next week's guest is the wonderful Sharon Sant, who I'm a huge fan of, and probably, well, she is the person I've read the most books of. And she'll be talking about her Sky Song trilogy, and also about The Memory Game, which is a wonderful, wonderful young adult book. So it's please tune in again for that, and thank you for tuning in for this show. And please follow me on Twitter at Dusty Cover and JY Paradox Child. And also thank you to Douglas for producing this show. You are all wonderful. Have a lovely week. Stay safe. Read something, and please review. We love you, reviewers out there. Bye for now.